Merry Christmas, everyone. This is Rudy Giuliani, and this is America's Mayor Live. And as you can see, we have a beautiful Christmas tree right behind us. We're at Dr. Maria's home in New Hampshire, in beautiful New Hampshire, where there's snow on the ground. It isn't falling, but it fell, I guess, yesterday and the day before. So everything is beautifully Christmas white. And things seem very ready for Santa Claus to arrive at all these beautiful homes that are surrounding us. So if we get some noise, you hear some noise outside, don't be surprised if it isn't Santa and his reindeer, including the one with the big red nose, who's my favorite. But really what this day is all about is, to me, this is the most important day in the history of the world. This is the day on which God became man. And of course, many Catholics, Christians would say that Easter is the holiest of days, and that I imagine is so, but there wouldn't be an Easter without a Christmas, without a birth. And this is the shocking event that brought the wise men from the east, the shepherds from nearby, and shook the world. It didn't know it was being affected that way, but that was part of the mystery of it and part of the strength of it. So I'm going to read to you the gospel that's read at midnight mass for 1,000 years plus. It's the gospel, in this case, of Mark. During the masses on Christmas, the other two Christmas gospels are also read. Matthew's beautiful Christmas gospel and John's very poetic Christmas gospel about the Word being made flesh. But this is probably the one that this is the one. That's probably the most famous, I would say, and the one that's associated with the first Mass of Christmas, which is the midnight Mass, which in some places has already been said. Sometimes it's said like at 6 or 7 in the evening. Sometimes, like in New York at St. Patrick's, it's said at exactly midnight. At exactly midnight, the church goes dark, the bells ring, and the cardinal walks in a procession, singing Adeste Fidelis, which is the Latin for O Come All Ye Faithful. And the gospel read at night all over the world is the following. In those days, a decree went forth from Caesar Augustus that the whole world would be enrolled. This was a first enrollment when Quirinius was governor of Syria. So all went to be enrolled, each to his own town. And Joseph, too, went from Galilee, from the town of Nazareth to Judea, to the city of David that is called Bethlehem, because he was the house and family of David, to be enrolled with Mary, his betrothed, who was with child. While they were there, the time came for her to have her child. And she gave birth to her firstborn son. She wrapped him in swaddling clothes and laid him in a manger because there was no room for them in the inn. Now there were shepherds in the region living in the fields and keeping night watch over their flock. The angel of the Lord appeared to them, and the glory of the Lord shone round about them. And they were struck with great fear. The angel said to them, "Do not be afraid, for behold, I proclaim to you good news of great joy that will be for all of the people. For today in the city of David, a Savior has been born for you, who is Messiah and Lord. And this will be a sign for you. You will find an infant wrapped in swaddling clothes and lying in a manger." And suddenly there was a multitude of the heavenly host with the angels praising God and saying, "Glory to God in the highest, and on earth peace to those on whom his favor rests." So that's the gospel that is the most universal. and has already been read in St. Peter's Basilica at the Mass that is done by the Pope on Christmas Eve, which you may have already seen on television, and if you haven't, there'll be many reruns of it, and then of course your own Mass, which you may go to after we conclude our broadcast. You may have gone already, or you may go tomorrow morning, and then tomorrow morning they'll read Matthew's Gospel and they'll read John's Gospel. Strangely, Mark really doesn't have a Christmas Gospel. And the one I always find, the Christmas narration that I find the most complete, and probably, how would I know? It's a long time ago, but probably the most accurate is Matthew, because of the four, the only one who was clearly a disciple, an apostle, a contemporary of Jesus was Matthew. And you'll see in the other two Gospels after him, Mark and Luke, a lot of copying of Matthew. Beautiful things written of their own and stories of their own and somewhat different writing style, but Matthew was the most comprehensive. Christmas is a worldwide celebration, of course, and it's gone beyond its religious meaning. And for the 2,000 plus years that it's existed, it's been many different things. It really didn't start as a feast in the Christian tradition until a couple hundred years after Christ. By the Middle Ages, it was a grand celebration. The Advent season leading up to Christmas was fasting and austere, similar to Lent that leads up to Easter. People had different traditions of fasting, but meaning they would deny themselves food and drink and other things. The Italian tradition, which started in the Middle Ages and then worked its way into the Renaissance and into the modern day, was to eat a great deal of fish on Christmas Eve. And I don't know if you really call it fasting, because they ate a great deal of fish. Right? Seven different fishes, all of which had terrible odors, I thought, as a little boy. Please don't tell anybody that. But of course, that was done because the church then had many more days in which you couldn't eat meat. Every Friday, you couldn't eat meat. But here's the difference. Starting in the early Middle Ages, meaning 500 or so, and this was true in England in particular, in Germany very heavily, and most of Europe. But let's focus on England for a moment. In England, the Christmas celebration was wild from Christmas morning on, and they had that midnight Mass at 5 a.m. After the Mass was over and the religious part was done, it was all feasting. 12 days. The song, of course, right? On the first day of Christmas. That's from the English practice of celebrating Christmas for 12 days, because they didn't want it to end. And they were celebrating it just as fiercely on the 10th and 11th day as they were on the first day. Then we come into coming out of the Middle Ages in the era of the Puritans, when Cromwell removed King Charles. Cromwell and his very extreme form of Protestants. Remember, you sort of had the English church broke away from the Catholic Church, and the Lutherans and the Methodists and the Presbyterians, and they're kind of considered mainline Protestant churches. But then more severe churches developed, churches that believed in no music and no feasting of any kind and no happiness of any kind and no Christmas. And so the Puritans, some of whom came to America, brought that tradition here. And in parts of America, Christmas was illegal in Boston for a period of time. And it took a revival. Particularly in the English world. This didn't happen so much in the Latin world, where Christmas was always a great feast, or in Germany, where Christmas was always a great feast. But it happened in the English world. And the revival came with in America, Washington Irving; in England, Charles Dickens. And all of a sudden, it kind of opened up to enjoy Christmas again. And of course, it is what it is now. Now, here's my take on all of that. Many people get very upset about all of the secular, non-religious things about Christmas. I think people are even more aware of that now, which is good. I heard a lot of people today on radio, on television, talking and reminding people this is the day that Jesus was born, because it's surrounded by so much almost irrelevant to that. But in fact, it isn't, is it? And I think all of that celebrating is good. Even the ones that don't have to do with Jesus, the candy canes and the presents and the children going to see Santa Claus. And because you know what it does? It makes it a very special day. And it therefore reminds us to be reminded why it's a special day. I mean, let's say people that never heard the story I just read, at some point they're going to ask, why does everybody go crazy on this day? What is it? Well, it's real simple. You just calm down and say, this is the day on which God entered the world and gave his son so he could be a human and die for our sins. And then if that isn't going to make them think, nothing's going to make them think, right? So I think all the celebrating, some is really great, some is perfect, some is right on target, some is a little strange and beyond what it should be, but it's all good because it all shows us how special this most special day of the year is. So you have a great Christmas. Enjoy it. And I'm going to give you some good news. Everyone thinks that America is very down right now, that, we're losing power and we're not as powerful as we used to be. And we're not the leader of the world. And there's an article here about China becoming a much greater military power, which is true. It has become a much greater military power. And that America isn't what it used to be. Well, first of all, although the attitude we would sort of assume from the media that is a dictatorial force over us is that all Americans are down and they don't think we're as great as we used to be and you really can't achieve what you want anymore. Well, several polls were taken, I guess, in preparation for the new year and for Christmas. Some more will be released, by the way, but I happen to have a couple that will tell a very different story. And these aren't political polls, so there's no reason to have much doubt about them. About 70% of Americans believe they have achieved or are on their way to achieving the American dream. So the idea that the American dream is dead, well, 7 out of 10 Americans believe they're achieving it, so sure not dead. And when you say, well, what's the American dream? Is it wealth? You know what they tell you? 83% says it's freedom of choice. It's the freedom of being an American. And 80% say it's having a good family and being allowed in America to have the freedom to develop that. Only 15% say that becoming wealthy is essential to achieving that dream. Now, the fact is that Americans are wealthier than any group of people in the world. So you'd expect that a lot more would say that. But it sounds like they have pretty good perspective if 83% say the most important thing is freedom of choice, to construct your own life. And only 23% believe that they have less opportunity than their parents had. That's a far different picture than I think you get when you listen to the people who more and more are convincing me they hate America. Maybe because it is so great and they just can't possibly embrace greatness and goodness. 3/4 or more agreed that America global leadership is as strong, if not stronger than ever, right? That's 3 out of 4. That's 75%. As to culture and optimism and possibilities, America leads the world by 76% of Americans think that. Business achievement, 78%. And achieving positive change, also 78%. 84% believe the nation's scientific research leads the world. And 8 in 10 expected American contributions will remain vital for human progress. And 9 in 10 Americans feel grateful for the opportunity they have here in America. "90% believe that the ability to exercise meaningful control over their own lives is absolutely true of America and vital." So this is a study from the Archbridge Institute, and there are others very, very similar to it. Somewhere, I can't say these are probably the highest numbers, but all showing that way more Americans than we realize from what we get to hear presented to us as really extremely upsetting propaganda, because the level of media propaganda in this country now is at a crisis point, and it is it's as if we're living in a dictatorship of the media. The good news is Americans have rejected it. They don't listen to it anymore. They don't care about it. Witnessed the declining rates of people who watch broadcast television or go to movies or watch the Academy Awards or really give a damn what those jerks do, right? Also, they're trying to do the damnedest to say the economy is really suffering. America's, Americans' affordability. They convinced the poor, brainwashed people in New York who have been like that for well over 150 years, brainwashed. I mean, they've been Democrat since Boss Tweed, with the exception of me, LaGuardia, and about 4 others. I mean, there isn't a group of Americans that have a worse voting record than the people in New York City, with occasional miracles. They voted against Lincoln. They also just put a communist in office. And they're trying to convince us that they did that because things aren't affordable. The economy's terrible. The economy just grew in the last quarter more than it has in 3 years, 4.3%, almost an entire percent above what was forecast by the people who are the economists, who probably do a worse job of predicting the economy than weathermen do the weather. And holiday sales were up 4% when it was expected holiday sales were going to be down. And not only were holiday sales up online, they were also up in stores. In fact, Visa said physical outlets remain dominant, accounting for 73% of transactions, with 27% online. So I want you to know this, because a lot of what you're told, and therefore you go around believing, including me, is just dead wrong. It's dead wrong. Maybe you would say, well, everybody buys online. No, 73% did the transaction in person. Right? That's 7 out of 10. It is true the other is up, but it's still not what you think. You would say most people think the American dream is gone. No, most people think the American dream is still there. Some think it's greater than ever. And the economy is declining. No, the economy is up by 4.3%. And inflation, which they talk about all the time, yes, there is inflation. But compared to historical levels of inflation, it's very, very modest, and it's below what was predicted. It's now below 3%. The magic number, according to the idiot who runs the Fed, is 2%. But the only magic of that is him. I don't know that 2% is the right inflation number. And of course, you need some inflation. You need some inflation so that people's profits can go up, so they can pay people more. So as long as your wages is keeping track of inflation, it's just a number. It's when wages dip below. Now, there was a little decline in wages And the analysis of that is pretty darn simple. There's been a decrease in wages and an increase in productivity. So now I want you to think a little why that's the case. Because usually if there's a decrease in wages or less people are working, or there's going to be less things produced, right? Fewer people working, fewer things produced. How is it that fewer people are working by a little, and productivity is up by a lot? The fewer people are producing more things and making more money on it. Why is that? So you think about that, okay? And we're gonna put it over here, and I'm gonna tell you the answer as a Christmas present. And this all, of course, leads into, even though it is Christmas Eve, I'm not one of these who says that Thanksgiving and Christmas and holidays and whatever, you don't talk about. You should talk about politics. My goodness, it's your life. You elect the wrong president like Joe Biden and millions of people die. Please, I'm not exaggerating. I want you to look at Ukraine. I don't think there's anybody in the world that believes that would have happened if they hadn't cheated and stolen and taken that election. I mean, sometimes the price of theft is high. I don't think it's ever been higher than that. And I fought like hell. I kind of thought that had happened. Not that bad. I mean, I worked like hell right through COVID because I knew Joe Biden would get pretty close to destroying our country. I didn't think he'd destroy it as much as he did, though. So politics is important. And if your family can't talk about politics, there's something wrong with your family. Kind of work it out. Figure it out. Your family shouldn't be like a minor fascist enterprise where there's no freedom of speech. The family should be open. People you love, you should be able to talk about anything. And if not, that's an issue. That's a problem. That's something that should be fixed rather than nurtured for 20 or 30 or 40 years. So if you want to talk about the midterms, everything you see, everything you read, Trump is going to get destroyed in the midterms. Presidents in their first midterm always get destroyed. It's terrible. The economy is awful. First of all, the economy is great. The country has probably hardly ever been more powerful. People are a lot happier than you think. And how about this? Democrats have never been as unpopular. Nor have Republicans ever been more popular. And do you know who are the most popular? Moderate Republicans. Moderate Republicans are more popular than progressive Democrats, moderate Democrats, and MAGA. The single biggest category that dwarfs everybody else is if you call somebody a moderate Republican. Now, I don't know. Think about that one. That's very, very interesting. And it's hard to know how all of that is defined, right? Moderate. That doesn't mean rhinos. Doesn't mean rhinos because we don't have any rhinos left. I mean, they've all been driven out. I mean, Trump gets unanimous votes. So it's both the MAGA Republicans and the moderate Republicans who are voting for him. But and the people who have done the polling, say it has more to do not so much with issues, but with attitude. Are you harsh, or are you seem to be more forgiving and loving and caring, and it seems to be more attitude and personality and emotion and feeling. Not so much terribly different views on issues, because Republicans have a little more range of difference than Democrats do, but not much more. I mean, if you're a Republican, you're against high taxes and you're in favor of strong national defense, and it's more attitude and the way you approach things, the way you say things, that seems to change people. Whereas of course, the least popular are the progressive Democrats, as it should be. And that has become much worse with the appearance of the communist in New York and in several other places. One of the guys who has fallen the most to an approval rating that is abysmal in his own state, because he's been a senator there since forever, is Chuck Schumer. He's at 28% approval, which means that several local highway commissioners are considering running against him and probably would kick his ass. But he has the distinction of being thought of as a, and this is for people that are for or against Israel. He's seen as a traitor to his own people. Hey, he is. Well, we're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to look at a couple of Christmas scenes because we want to make sure we stay in the attitude of Christmas. It's just too important, and then we'll catch you up on things you need to know going into this great holiday. The most important things. We'll be back very shortly. And Merry Christmas again.
Rudy, you were smiling in your sleep.
I know the perfect gift for Christmas. Go to Rudy.coffee. U.S. Army Major Scott Smiley paid a high price serving our nation. Scott was leading his platoon in Iraq when a blast sent shrapnel through his eyes, leaving him blind and temporarily paralyzed. Scott would become the first blind active duty military officer before medically retiring years later. Thanks to friends like you, the Tunnel to Towers Foundation gave Scott and his family a mortgage-free, specially adapted smart home. Show your support for America's heroes now. Donate $11 a month to Tunnel to Towers at T2T.org.
And we
are back, and that's Ted, who I'm in the cold and he's in the warm. We're connected remotely, as is possible during Christmas. There's Ted. Now, it looks white in back. Oh, there you go. That's downtown Miami, right?
This is Miami.
It looked like New York when you showed the train. It looked like a scene from one of the detective movies. You know, one of the detective chases. Show that again.
Right.
That could
we
be
got
New
cars
York
coming
right
on the street here.
Yeah. Well, we talked about how wonderful and beautiful Christmas is and is going to be tomorrow for the children in particular. Last evening, I was with all of my relatives for a gathering, and my little granddaughter, Grace, who's just adorable. I mean, she's just 4 years old, was up until last night was afraid of Santa Claus. But my cousin played Santa Claus so well, and he gave her so many gifts that she ended up loving him.
Another Rudy.
Oh, and my cousin is also a Rudy. And he did a great job of playing Santa Claus. So do we have that picture we can show? Do you have that, Ted? Well, I don't know if we have that available right now, but we'll try to get it before the end of the show. So we do have to be realistic, unfortunately. And there it is. That's my daughter Caroline, and my granddaughter Grace. Now that's Andrew and Zaville's daughter, and Caroline, of course, is her aunt. So they do look alike when you look at them, right? And there they are. Now, little Grace, as I said, was afraid of Santa Claus. I played Santa Claus about a year or maybe 2 years ago. I don't remember. and it was it was hard to get her. The minute she maybe it's the kind of Santa Claus I am, but the minute I came in, she started crying. This time she was pretty close to it, but then Santa Claus gave her one gift and another gift and another gift. And by the time it was finished, I like this guy. So Santa Claus now is where he should be. However, we got to think about Christmas throughout the world. And so our mind has to go to Ukraine, where Russia is, every estimate is that Russia is going to, first of all, the last 2 months, they've been hitting Ukraine unnecessarily and cruelly. I say unnecessarily and cruelly because the war is over, but for working out an agreement, damn. But he's still knocking off civilians left and right because it is quite obvious that Putin likes to kill people. He pretended to Bush to be a Christian, except, Ukraine is being bombed like hell during Christmas. And Russia has still been incapable of knocking all the power out in Ukraine, but they're able to do it in certain sections for long periods of time. So Kyiv can be without power for 13, 14 hours. And they're not sure what Putin's going to be hitting tonight. But they are sure there are going to be major hits for Christmas. They will not be on the military facilities. They'll be on the civilians. So when we talk about focusing on civilian deaths, and we blame Israel, who does everything it can to avoid civilian deaths, the got to focus on is Putin. I mean, even Ukraine, in striking back, is striking back at their oil supplies, not at the people. Putin's going right for the innocent human beings and killing them. I don't understand why we give that murderer so much leeway. Plus, I think he's a damn bully. Natalia Bakhtar, who lives in the city of Odessa, who recently has been the worst hit city because that's a port city, so they're trying to affect their economy too. She escaped to Odessa. She left Mariupol, which was a city that Russia conquered. And she was being interviewed, and she was being interviewed about the terrible power outages and how difficult it is for a family and how difficult Christmas would be. And she was reflecting on that. And all of a sudden, as almost an aside, she said, no matter what, it's a lot better than living under Russia. And I believe that's what the Ukrainian people believe. The idea that they're going to submit to a Russian dictatorship, I think they'd rather die. Look, this has been 1,000 years. This is in their heritage, in their blood. If you know Ukrainians, you know that. So I don't know how this is all going to end. It was supposed to end a while ago. It was supposed to end by Christmas. Yeah, what's happening on Christmas instead? Innocent people and babies being killed for reasons that don't make any sense anymore. So let's pray for them. Now let's pray for a solution. And as we move out of Christmas in the next couple of days, we'll talk about what we think are the ways to solve this. But they do require taking a little risk. All solutions require risk. But when will we ever afraid of that, to bring freedom to people? I know we're very much of the attitude that the whole world depends on us too much and we do too much and we're not appreciated enough. And there is something to that. But there's also something to being selfish when God has given you so much. And when you can help. And sure, it takes a sacrifice or some kind of risk. But let's face it, if we don't do it, who is? I mean, if we weren't doing it for the last 200 years, who knows where the hell the world would be, right? The U.S. moved a large number of special operations aircraft, troops, and equipment into the Caribbean. I don't know how many more they can move into the Caribbean. I seem to have reported that 5 times in the last 4 weeks. And when you look at the grid, it looks like we want excuse me, it almost looks like we can take all of South America, not just Venezuela. But you know why that's there. Trump has given this guy every possible push to get the hell out of there. Unlike Putin, Trump is a normal, decent human being. He doesn't like to kill people. Right? That's how it should be. A great leader has to have the ability to use ultimate force to protect his people in the world. But he also has to have the ability to use it only when absolutely necessary and in a very restrained way. And I think that fits Donald Trump very, very closely. I think he has been very careful and very strategic. And when he did use force, it was for maximum effect, like on Iran. And I think Maduro and who may be thinking he can wait him out is making a terrible mistake. If Trump has to invade to get rid of him, he will. He is trying to avoid that. He's trying to avoid unnecessary deaths. There are dictators who have left because they don't want their own people to be hurt. Yeah, they can be dictators and they can be terrible and they can be murderers, but there's some spark of humanity still left in them. Doesn't seem there's any of that in Putin. And I don't know. It could actually be, I don't know Maduro. I know people who've dealt with him who say he is dreadfully stupid. So I don't know if this is the dictator complex or the lack of brains or both. But nobody really thought he was sharp enough to replace Chavez. So he might not be smart enough to realize he's been checkmated. The game's over. Get the hell out of there. You're going to get to live. And really, it's not really you getting to live. A lot of other people are going to get to live. You don't require them to come in and take out in the toughest possible way. And the U.S. now has said that they are going to seize ships also for enforcing the prohibition against black market oil. So that means a lot more pressure on Russia and China, like the tankers that they've hit. And the ones they didn't hit very, very carefully are ones that don't fall within the sanctions. The Supreme Court made a terrible mistake. The Supreme Court agreed with the lower court Democrat judges who don't seem to understand that the president has the executive power in the United States. The Supreme Court, in a 6-3 vote with 3 of the conservatives voting with them and 3 going the other way, 3 going in favor of presidential power, that the president doesn't have enough power to send the National Guard into Chicago, even though Chicago fails to enforce and deliberately interferes with the immigration laws of the United States and puts the lives of ICE agents at risk. And the president has the right to use the National Guard to protect his resources, his men and women. They read that to mean only military resources. Never been read that way before, but the 3 liberals and 3 of the weaker conservatives came to that conclusion tentatively. So they kept the temporary injunction in place. So this is a temporary injunction. On further review, they could change their minds. And if there's more proof of interference, then the president would be upheld. But it must be really nice to not get elected and have to go through an election and still act like you're the president. I mean, nobody elected those guys and women. Presidents selected them. A few of them obvious mistakes. I mean, the one who can't define a woman, how the hell is she going to figure out presidential power? She doesn't know what a woman is. By the way, you should never have graduated from grammar school if you don't know what a woman is. three men who escaped the Atlanta jails, who were murderers, were recaptured, which is really good because I've seen the inside of an Atlanta jail, and it's horrendous. Having been persecuted by Fulton County, who's now been proven to be wrong, and I just want you to reflect one more time of the last week, because we've now had the number 300,000 thrown around twice in the last 6 months, or maybe not 6 months, a year. A while back, about a year ago, there was the discovery of over 300,000 missing ballots from Georgia. Now there are 315,000 ballots that were not authorized, not certified, don't have any appearance of legitimacy, such that they should not have been counted. I mean, what are they? They're probably the ones that were done in the little factory they had 3 blocks away where they were printing up ballots. Now, 300,000 of those disappeared, but this is another 300,000 we're talking about. We don't know who those 300,000 were for. And we think they were Fulton County. We're not sure. These we know come from Fulton County. So we know that if you took these 315,000 ballots out, Biden would have gotten smashed in the election, because he won Fulton County like 8-2. So figure 8-2, you take out 315,000 ballots, Trump wins by over 100,000, which is what I originally said a long time ago, before they tried to destroy me, put me in bankruptcy, take away my law licenses, and not just me, lots of other people, some worse, some less. Okay, we went through that because we believed it, and we ended up telling the truth. Now, what's going to happen to them for having lied and for having committed horrendous crimes? Trying to prosecute or prosecuting and arresting innocent individuals is a horrible crime. And if you let people get away with it, they continue to do it if they're bad people, like a lot of the Democrats are. If these people are not held to account during this 2-3 year period, if and when the Democrats come back as the crooked party that they are right now, they're going to do it again, whether it's the same people or new people. I mean, part of the reason they did it under Biden is because I do think the president, out of the goodness of his heart, made a mistake in not prosecuting in 17. I was very much in favor of, I wanted to arrest Hillary and prosecute her. I mean, smashing up computers and destroying emails. And Ted,
Mayor,
I see you there under, I don't know what.
Yeah, well, we are here in live from Miami, Florida, my first Christmas Eve from South Florida. But I had a question about this. At the time when you were working on this in Georgia, I distinctly remember you also had efforts in Arizona, Michigan, Pennsylvania, where you were talking to the state legislatures. And you and your team, Mayor, at the time, you were working within the Constitution. That's the ironic part about this, right? And what they claimed you guys were doing when you were working on this. Every day, every discussion I remember being a part of or listening in on involved how you were doing this in a way that respected the Constitution, right? And you were talking to the legislatures, you were going to meet with them, including in Georgia. Did you have support at the time in the state of Georgia?
Oh, my goodness, yeah. That's a very good point, Ted. The single best report then written about that election was written by Senator Ligon of Georgia. It was completed. Just about now, like right around Christmas, a little after Christmas still in 2020. And if you read that report and you read it carefully, about half of it is the work that we supply, the evidence that we, meaning Trump's, not just me, but Trump's lawyers in general. The other half he developed himself. And he proves about 4 different ways that Trump won the state. This is way back. And he asked in the name of any number of senators, for I believe 10 more days from Vice President Pence in order to in order to develop that and get a vote of the full Senate. Now, frankly, it was being delayed, among others, by the Republican governor, and of course, the very, very questionable Secretary of State Raffensperger. So, like when the president said to Raffensperger, "Can you find me 11,000 votes?" He really meant out of 600,000 that are in doubt, right? And he said it at the time. He said, "I didn't tell him to make up phony votes. There were plenty of phony votes to just go find." Everybody knew that. It's right there. If he went to the Ligon report, he could have found, wasn't quite that many in the Ligon report, but it was a couple 100,000. So that was one done by the legislature based on 110 witnesses. Of course, totally ignored by the press, who still write, including the Wall Street Journal and the Post, the president's false claims that the election was fixed. At least they have to write that the president believes, and actually, if you go to, you can find a similar report in Wisconsin written by a great judge who they've maligned horribly about how Wisconsin, Trump clearly won, and exactly how they phonied the votes there. In Pennsylvania, they don't even know how many votes were cast. They never figured it out. It shifted every day. I mean, enough votes had to be cast so that Biden could win. Every time he would give a total number, something went wrong. There's no question that those three states and Arizona are states that by the time we got to the hearings that Pence presided over, it was clear that those four states Trump had won. And when they say Pence was asked to violate the Constitution, he was not. There's nothing in the Constitution that says the vice president, he's called the president of the committee of the whole. Then there's nothing in the Constitution that says he can't hold up the vote until right before the inauguration, and there's nothing in the Constitution that says that he can. Nothing says he can. Nothing says he can't. And so it becomes a question of what do you assume the powers of the chair are? Does the chair have the power to raise questions about the legitimacy of votes that are presented? It would seem to me it does. Other vice presidents have taken that position, so he wouldn't be alone. And that's why I think Republicans are very angry at Pence and will never forgive him, because he wasn't being asked to do anything illegal. There was nothing illegal about it. Now, there are other things that were completely legal, like the alternate electors who poor people got indicted, some of them destroyed, are perfectly authorized and legal. They happened before. Kennedy and Nixon did it. And nobody would report that either. And judges didn't even care until eventually, several of those cases were dismissed by judges. Before the ultimate dismissal of the case in Georgia. But those counts are still kind of alive in Arizona. I'm still, I think, under indictment in Arizona. In Arizona, that's the one where the president wasn't indicted. The other four, he was. That one, they'd indicted him so often, I think they decided not to indict him in Arizona because they're going to elect him by acclamation if they did. But in Arizona, the judge has said that the case is unconstitutional, the case is political, the case is dismissed, but the prosecutor has a certain amount of time to appeal it. It's a very short period. It's now almost a year that the judge is letting the charges hang over us, even though the judge has concluded they were unfair. I mean, what is this? Moscow. They sure make it look that way when Democrats are in charge. And the idea that Trump uses lawfare the way they did is ridiculous. I mean, I just ask you to concentrate on one thing. Everybody is real worried about the way James Cardinal Comey was treated. Anybody arrest him with Gestapo troops, with machine guns? With CNN coming along at 4:00 in the morning or putting ankle bracelets on him? That's what they did to Navarro. That's what they did to Stone. So you can tell I'm still pretty exercised about this, but for a very important reason. Because if they're not held, to some kind of accountability, it's just going to happen again, Ted. You know that. So China appears to be becoming a much greater and larger arms maker, and I think this should concern us. But basically, what we should be doing is what we're doing, which is expanding our capacity as a military power. The only thing that will protect us against these atheistic dictators and tyrants who want to destroy us and have unfortunately and tragically infiltrated our institutions to do it, both the Islamic group and the communist group, is military strength. So the more we can put into military and the defense of this country, the less chance we're going to have to use it. Iran is using missile launchers again. I think that that should be stopped quickly. Nothing like the broken windows theory. Get it early. Maybe we don't have to do as big an attack as last time. If they got 2 or 3, take them out. No, the president's got to keep hitting them and they'll stop, and maybe the Ayatollah will just go away, as he should. The Ayatollah is the Ayatollah is a living, breathing example of what's wrong with Muslim religion. Not what's wrong with us, but what's wrong with their religion. Because their religion and the leader of their religion was an Ayatollah. And he presided over armies. He killed people. He tortured people. He was a pedophile. Not a person to be starting a religion. We're talking about Muhammad, by the way, who, if you do a disrespectful portrait of him, you're destroyed. Although you can do it about our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ all the time, and you're a reporter for free speech. You want to compare Jesus' life to Muhammad's? You want to compare the two? Love your neighbor as yourself. Kill Jews. And then when they let up on killing him, they said, "Yeah, we won't kill him as long as they pay us tribute, and then we'll make them into dhimmis, which are slaves." Love your neighbor as yourself. That's Jesus. Muhammad. Jews are rats. Christians are not much better either. Have they killed more Christians than Jews, the Muslims? No doubt more Christians right now in Africa. So don't. And we're going to have to go into a different way of thinking about this. We've got to get tough and realistic and stop the euphemisms. Islam is a religion of peace. That's the last thing it is. It's got to be redefined. You want it to be a religion of peace, you got to redefine it. You got to pull out about somewhere around half of the Quran and Hadith. That's a lot of pulling, but it's got to be done. Largely, it's got to be done because all the good Muslims, and there are a lot of very good Muslims, the vast majority don't stand up against the bad ones, and they play protection. And as long as they do that, we're at tremendous risk. The Epstein case has had now, what's it, 30,000 more files released? Or was it 30,000 more pages of documents related to Jeffrey Epstein. Now, the tragedy of this is you can't understand them. You can't understand them because they're just a bunch of names and people that were with him. And you can draw sort of inferences one way or the other based on the time that they were with him, the period of time they were with him. But very difficult because this Epstein guy led different lives. He led more than 2 different lives. He led probably 3 or 4 different lives. So you're going to have people that were with him that were pedophiles like he was. But you're going to have a lot of people that were with him because of his financial success. Now, we don't know what that was based on, but he did produce a lot of money for people. And he did represent people, and he represented them legitimately. He also was well-known in the early days, a well-known playboy, of which, the vast majority of playboys aren't fooling around with little girls. And he was a mainstay of the Democrat Party, which is why there were so many more Democrats involved in this than Republicans. The evidence that has been revealed makes it clear that President Trump did absolutely nothing wrong with him. Nothing. The difficulty was at an early part of Epstein's life, the 1990s into the early 2000s. He was a member of Trump's club, and Trump was friendly with him. Wasn't unfriendly and wasn't his best friend. And I've investigated the whole thing and have known for years that there's no even suggestion that Trump did a damn thing wrong here. But because there's an association, they're trying to make it out this way. So, for example, they've got this thing here. This is NBC News, right? So they put out these 3 pictures. They got a picture of Epstein in the middle, Prince Andrew, who we know from Virginia Giuffre. She claims, now dead, of course, the poor girl. At 17, he was pimped out to her. She was pimped out to him, rather. Now, there's no such evidence against Trump. So what the heck is his picture doing there? Shouldn't Clinton's picture be there? Clinton was with that guy 50 times more than Trump. That's about right, 50 times more. Trump, there's no record and there's no evidence that Trump ever went to the island with Epstein. Clinton did several times, more than several times. There are pictures of Clinton with girls on his lap. Those girls look awful young even when their faces are blacked out. Somebody got to ask them. No pictures like that of Trump. I mean, this is disgraceful what they're doing, but what the heck? It's what they've been doing from the beginning. So it's very obvious to me why there's been so much difficulty in releasing these. But these are things that people don't understand unless they're treated with intelligence and wisdom as opposed to politicized. And that is the sensitivity of ruining people's reputation based on rumor and innuendo and association and connection. We also go through this Christmas season, and we'll be going into the new year with the worst outbreak of anti-Semitism that we've had in the West since Hitler. And that is not an exaggeration. Just on Monday in New York, as one example, the police arrested a guy named Armani Charles. He's 23. He knifed a 35-year-old Elias Rosner in the chest on the 16th of December. while yelling at him, "I'm going to kill Jewish people. I'm going to kill a Jew today. I don't give an F." We wouldn't be in the mess if the Holocaust had happened. If the Holocaust had happened, meaning if all the Jews hadn't been destroyed. Now, this is not isolated. If it were isolated, it would be bad enough. And it happens in a very sensitive place in the city for me, and that's the place where the pogrom happened under David Dinkins, the last left-wing fool that we had as mayor. Oh, not the last one. De Blasio was the last left-wing fool that we had as mayor. At least 20% of Mondami's transition team have a strong history of hating Jews. One is Zakaya Shakir Ansari. He has a picture with a banner of a red triangle, which is showing support for one of the worst group of psychotic terrorist murderers in the world, Hamas. And it says, "Long live the resistance." And that was done during an anti-Israeli encampment at City College in the spring of 2024. He's helping Trump with youth and education. That's good. Educate them to hate Jews. That's what Hitler did. You must, and Hitler was big friend, Mondami, of your Grand Mufti of Palestine. Big friend of a lot of your religious leaders that you respect. They were all pro-Hitler. They were all pro-Hitler because Hitler wanted to do what they wanted to do, wipe out the Jews. And what Muhammad wanted to do, your leader, said Allah told him to do it. Some God that Allah is, huh? John Paulo Biancochi is on the committee. And he was part of the NYU encampment and made some of the speeches about the elimination of the Jews. He's working on community organizing. Maybe we can organize another pogrom so we can outdo Dinkins. Then Youssef Mubarez, he's working on small businesses. He's got a Facebook video about Hamas and dismissing his propaganda, all of the allegations about October 7th, the raping and the kidnapping. And then there's Cassie Fuzia. She's working on worker justice, whatever the hell that is. The day after October 7, she said very simply from her great wisdom, I'm sure, that it was justified because of the way that people of Hamas were treated, justified just raping babies. It's okay. You want to take a look at them? I don't know, Ted, if you can show them the pictures of Bianchi and Ansari and Mubarez and Fuzia. And this is quite a study group for the new mayor. It'll give you an idea of what the hell people in New York are going to be facing starting on January 1st, when he's going to have a big celebration and close down all lower Manhattan. Whew. He selected a fire commissioner who was a 31-year member of the FDNY. Now, I don't think he's a member of the FDNY for 31 years. I think he was a member of EMS. He was chief of EMS operations from 2019 to 2022. He describes Lillian Bonsignore as the second female fire commissioner. First one was a disaster, by the way. Now, I don't know. I want you to take a picture of that guy. Now, this may be a wrong picture, but this is supposedly Lillian right here. See Lillian? Can you take a good... Ted, is there any way you can take a close-up on this guy? A closer close-up on him? There. Now, tell me, does that look like a Lillian to you? Lillian Bonsignore. It may have been maybe you pointed the wrong guy or the wrong woman. Mayor-elect Zohan Mondami named former EMS chief Lillian Bonsignore as the FBI's next commissioner. Bonsignore, a 31-year member of the FDNY, he became a member of the FDNY when I made him a member, when I merged the EMS into the FDNY. Until then, it was separate. Will be just a second woman to take the reins. Now, could the Post have made a mistake? Once again, take a look.
Just so you know, it's after 9.
This is going to, what?
It's after 9.
Well, this is going to go down well with my guys. Really, we've already destroyed the morale of the police department. Let's see what we can do to make our firefighters disgruntled and unhappy, and at least get the guy's sex right. Or maybe Mondami's like the justice who doesn't know what a woman is. That must be really difficult as a Supreme Court justice when you can't define woman. I wonder how much else you can't define. I'm not even going to cover this because it's Christmas Eve. That is, it was a whole big, long interview with Hunter Biden, who's whining that he was treated badly. The reason for all of his dishonesty and all the stealing that he and his old man did, and their taking of 31 million from the Red Chinese and millions from our enemies in Russia and millions from the Ukraine. And he gave half of his income to his father for 30 years and admitted in a written document, which is what an email is, right? The reason is Obama did it. Obama forced him to do it. I didn't know that. So I guess we got to put Obama in jail if he got you to do it. Huh? Why don't you go testify against him? What a nightmare in American history, huh? But we're not going to end like that for Christmas, are we? No, we're going to end saying a prayer together because traditionally at midnight tonight, Christmas begins. I remember for many, many years celebrating it at St. Patrick's Cathedral before I was mayor, when I was a private citizen, a little boy, when I was U.S. attorney, when I was mayor and sat in the first row. And Cardinal O'Connor was my good friend and my hero. I remember the first year that I was mayor, coming home and then leaving 2 hours later because a police officer had died on my first Christmas Eve. And it was a very, very sad suicide of a young man who took his life because his girlfriend broke up with him. And, it just takes you from the beauty of St. Patrick's and the unbelievable ethereal spirit of that mass. When the lights go out at 1 minute to midnight, and then at exactly midnight, the choir begins with, "Oh, come all ye faithful," and the cardinal processes in, often with, 40, 50 priests and bishops, and then there are members of the Orthodox faith, and members of the Protestant churches, and even rabbis. That's where I met Rabbi Potasnik, as you know. That's what I think of as that's what Christmas is about. It's about the baby being born to save us. And we got to keep reminding ourselves of that. And then the wonderful things he taught us, because the things that he taught us answer everything. They answer everything, including all the problems we're facing. It's just got to study them hard enough and think about them hard enough and be disciplined enough to practice them. And Jesus doesn't expect you to be perfect. He sets out a standard of perfection, but he knows that you're going to fail. And that's why he always admonished his disciples when he was being too good to the sinners, and he would say, "Well, these are the people I came to save." and kind of gently suggesting to them, that's who you all are. None of you are any better. And when you start thinking you are, that's when you start to really stray. And then you got to come back to him and just read what he says and practice it. Do the best you can. And when you can't, admit it, pick yourself up and do it all over again. And it's really a beautiful religion. It's the reason it captured the whole world. There is no other religion that is practiced in more parts of the world than the Catholic religion. And I'm very thankful that I was born that way, educated that way, and I was given that great gift. And it's all because this little child was born. So please celebrate it, enjoy it, and understand what it is. Do the best you can to understand what it is. And when I say the best you can, we're never going to completely understand it. Just do the best you can to understand what it's all about. And if you do the best you can, you're going to be a great person. Well, Merry Christmas to everyone. We have a few more shows before the new year, so we've got a lot of time to recapture the rest of the year. And we'll see you tomorrow.
Merry Christmas, Mayor.
Oh, tomorrow we'll have a video on, right, Ted?
That's
We'll get
right,
a
Mayor.
video about Christmas. And then on Friday, we'll be back with you live.
Right.
To talk over everything that happened. So again, enjoy Christmas with your families and with your friends and a little bit with yourself and in church. So thank you, Jesus. Pray for us. And of course, God bless America. It's our purpose to bring to bear the principle of common sense and rational discussion to the issues of our day. America was created at a time of great turmoil, tremendous disagreements, anger, hatred. There was a book written in 1776 that guided much of the discipline of thinking that brought to us the discovery of our freedoms, of our God-given freedoms. It was Thomas Paine's Common Sense, written in 1776, one of the first American bestsellers, in which Thomas Paine explained, by rational principles, the reason why these small colonies felt the necessity to separate from the Kingdom of Great Britain and the King of England. He explained their inherent desire for liberty, for freedom, freedom of religion, freedom of speech, the ability to select the people who govern them. And he explained it in ways that were understandable to all the people, not just the elite. Because the desire for freedom is universal. The desire for freedom adheres in the human mind, and it is part of the human soul. This is exactly the time we should consult our history. Look at what we've done in the past and see if we can't use it to help us now. We understand that our founders created the greatest country in the history of the world, the greatest democracy, the freest country, a country that has taken more people out of poverty than any country ever. All of us are so fortunate to be Americans. But a great deal of the reason for America's constant ability to self-improve is because we're able to reason, we're able to talk, we're able to analyze. We are able to apply our God-given common sense. So let's do it. It's our purpose to bring to bear the principle of common sense and